Alright guys, welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today we'll be breaking down our projections for the College Game Day crew for the 2021 season. It's always a big event when the Game Day crew is in town. The atmosphere, just the personalities, everything about it is phenomenal. So today this is what we're going to be looking at, where they're likely be heading on a week-to-week basis. This is also contingent on how teams perform throughout the year. So for further down this list, it could change significantly. But currently, this is what I'm looking at, and this is what I think is going to happen. So we'll jump right into it. At week 1, Charlotte, North Carolina, Georgia versus Clemson. This is a no-brainer. This is likely to be a top 3 matchup to kick off the 2021 season. Great matchup as it's been the last time these two squared off in 2013 and 14. Georgia comes into this game leading the FBS in rushing defense in back-to-back seasons, but the story will be focused on the Bulldog offense. UGA looked completely different under JT Daniels. His presence as a passer completely changed the dynamic of this football team. He threw for over 300 yards per game in his 4 appearances. Clemson's plan to defend the staggering attack is with the return of all 11 starters on this defense. 10 now because Darian Kendrick was dismissed. He's now at Georgia, so the return of 10 starters, along with Xavier Thomas. He's going to be thrown back into rotation. He missed all of 2020 due to COVID, but former 5-star. He was a big-time playmaker in his first 2 years for Clemson. Clemson's offense, they replaced Trevor Lawrence. DJ Uiagalelei he'll be making his 3rd career start. This time it's going to be a full-time starter after shining in his debut last year against Boston College and Notre Dame. Plenty to like about this game is both teams. I'm not a fan of either team, but as a fan of college football, I love this game. You're going to see Lynn J. Dixon, Will Shipley, that nice Georgia, it's going to be interesting to see how Georgia defends that nice, balanced running attack duo. A lot of speed, a lot of athleticism there. And also we get to see Justin Ross back. So quick breakdown of that game. Can't wait to see what happens. So we move to week 2. Columbus, Ohio. Oregon comes to Columbus to play Ohio State. The Ducks were set to host the Buckeyes last year in Eugene a season ago, but COVID dampened those plans. This year, the back end of the home-and-home series is set to take place in the cold state of Ohio, between two teams likely to be ranked inside the top 15, potentially top 10. Oregon's defense features arguably the best player in FBS in defensive end, Kayvon Thibodeau, which will be a terror for Ohio State's offensive line that replaces 3 starters and inserts a new quarterback under center. But Ohio State has the nation's top offensive tackle duo, Nicholas Petit-Frere and Thayer Munthard. Can't wait to see that matchup. It's going to be a lot of scouts you're going to be watching. You're going to learn a lot about some guys in this game. I think C.J. Stroud, you mentioned the new quarterback under center. I think he's going to have a phenomenal season. It's not much of a concern, but, for your second career start, likely your second career start to come against an Oregon defense, an impressive secondary, and Kayvon off the edge. It's going to be tough. Even at home, it's not going to be easy. Oregon, they struggled on offense at times in 2020, but returned one of the nation's most talented supporting casts, led by running back C.J. Verdell. Highly impressive receiving core as well. Devon Williams, Johnny Johnson, Jalen Redd, just to mention a few. The Buckeyes secondary, and the whole defense kind of as a whole was a bit shaky last fall. They're set to replace numerous starters. This game should be closer than people think, and, the Ducks could potentially come out on top. Ohio State's extremely stout up front. They're a top 10 rush defense a season ago. Haskell Garrett is back to anchor that down. Can't wait to see this matchup all around. I think it's phenomenal for college football that we get to open the year with back-to-back great matchups. Going ahead and moving on to number 3, Gainesville, Florida. Alabama Crimson Tide, they visit the Florida Gators. The defending national champions open the season versus Miami, and then they kick off conference play by traveling to play the Gators in the Swamp. This will be a tough road test for the young but highly talented Bryce Young, but the Gators' defense was its Achilles heel in 2020, and it will get to showcase their improvements early on in 2021. This contest, a rematch of the SEC title game, will give Emory Jones an opportunity to display his skills and introduce himself to the world as a potential future star. This is going to be a big game for the Gators and Mullins. They will look to add a signature win to his resume. This is the best time to get Alabama in Week 3 at home with a rowdy home atmosphere because Alabama's not going to be playing their best football in Week 3. So this is going to be a very treacherous game, and by no means this is going to be a cakewalk for Alabama. Of course, they could win this game emphatically, but Week 3, early on in the season, this is going to be a big test for Alabama. Can't wait to watch this matchup. Week 4, Chicago, Illinois, Soldier Field, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish versus the Wisconsin Badgers. This is a battle. They're going to square up in Chicago in a battle of true toughness and physicality, as both these teams are built off that in the trenches. Notre Dame replaces a lot on both sides of the ball, including Ian Book, but his successor is former Badger quarterback Jack Cohen. Interesting. I don't think there was any bad blood when he transferred, but it's always special when you get to play your former team, get to prove something, even if there's good intentions. Still, you want to go out there and prove something. So, can't wait to see what Cohen can do in this matchup. Kyron Williams will be running behind a newly revamped but nicely recruited offensive line to face what was statistically the best defense in the Big Ten a season ago. Kane Madden comes over from Marshall. You get three guys who are going to step into starting roles. Jared Patterson, Zeke Correll being two of them. It's not really an inexperienced offensive line for Notre Dame. These guys weren't starters, but they have plenty of experience. So they really just reload on this offensive line. In Wisconsin, they have some question marks on the defensive front with Laudermilk gone. But I'm not really concerned. I think the Badgers' front seven is great with Leo Chanel, Jack Sanborn at linebacker. But all around the Badgers' offense, they struggled immensely last season, and all signs point to a low-scoring, physical affair. But could also give us one of these teams a head start in adding to its resume as the first playoff rankings will be closing in. I think this is going to be a great game, an underrated game. I think a lot of people should tune into this one. Week 5, Notre Dame again. We head to South Bend, Indiana. Cincinnati Bearcats will travel to the great state of Indiana. This is a pretty decent, it's kind of dependent on the result of the week before, but this is currently the top matchup on the docket for Week 5. Cincinnati returns a lot from last season's team that made a legit push at the playoffs. Blacked wins over big programs and have a prime opportunity in 2021. They play Indiana 2 weeks prior. They get the bye week. Then they play the Irish. Big-time opportunities for Luke Fickell and his team. If Cincinnati can top the Irish, or top the Hoosiers, and then come in here and take care of business in Indiana and in the conference, they could have a legit push at the playoffs. This is probably going to be the biggest game of Luke Fickell's career as a head coach. If Notre Dame can navigate their way through a tough schedule, and Cincinnati wins this game, it's going to speak volumes, and it's going to be incredibly key for the playoffs. So this game is a massive deal in college football. Week 6, we start to dive into some phenomenal matchups here. Alabama will travel to Kyle Field to take on Texas A&M. Regardless of the result in Week 3 in Gainesville, this should set up to be an elite showdown for the top spot in the SEC West. The Aggies typically battle the tide quite hard in College Station, and the athletic ability by presumable quarterback for the Aggies and Haynes King brings to the table is reminiscent to that of kind of Johnny Manziel, and will provide an ample opportunity, kind of like Emory Jones, to introduce himself to the CFB world. The Aggies defense will also be looking for redemption following last season's beatdown early in 2020. This would be a signature win for Jimbo and what hush the doubters in Aggie land. You got DeMarvin Leal headlining that defense. This is going to be a really good matchup. Alabama, they typically don't play their best ball in Aggie land in College Station. A&M, even when they've been unranked and not really highly winning games, under Kevin Sumlin, they've usually contested the tide very well. So this is going to be a great game, big-time opportunity for Jimbo Fisher and his squad to pick up a massive win. Week 7, Salt Lake City, Utah, Arizona State Sun Devils versus the Utah Utes. Arizona State is going to be a very good team this fall and should likely be the favorite in the South Division come this season. But they have to battle the Utes and the Trojans. The Utes actually play SC a week before this, so, I think both of these teams are either going to be undefeated or have just one loss coming into Week 7. So this should certainly see the game day crew in town, a night game in Salt Lake City. The Utes, they're looking to rebound following a 3-2 season, and Kyle Whittingham, one of the nation's best coaches, should have this team inside the top 25, competing for the division and the whole conference. I anticipate this being a highly ranked matchup. Jaden Daniels makes his return at Salt Lake City, though, a place where he played his worst career game back in 2019. I believe he was 4 of 16, had a pick, not many passing yards. He also ran, I think he had 16 carries, -2 yards. He was just terrible that afternoon. The Utes defense really rallied him up. It's not going to be any easier, though. This defense is probably better than it was back in 2019. All around this matchup, though, should make its way to prime time if both these teams come out the gates on fire. I hope they do, because I'd love to see this game in prime time with all the talent on display, and it'd give the college football world an opportunity to see some of these players they typically don't watch, on the West Coast. So I hope this game comes with plenty of risk and reward. I think this is going to be a phenomenal matchup. Week 8, Bloomington, Indiana. The only time College Game Day has been to Bloomington was in 2017 when they hosted the Buckeyes on Thursday night. And they played them tough for the first half, and then the second half, J.K. Dobbins ran wild. If 2020, though, was any indication of how good this team can be, then 2021 could be special. Last season, the Hoosiers forced some turnovers and lit up the OSU secondary as they nearly pulled off the upset in Columbus. Coming to Bloomington has never been an easy task for their ranked Big Ten foes, and that included the years where IU struggled to stay around the 500 mark. Now you have to play them on the road where they're actually now a good football team. They get a lot of experience back from last year's a near upset where they found out that it's possible, to knock down this team they've lost to for 20 plus years. It's the current longest winning streak. I think it's 22 or 23 games in a row the Buckeyes have taken from the Hoosiers. If IU can take care of business and be in the thick of the Big Ten race come late October, you can bank on College Game Day making an appearance. Week 9, another game featuring Notre Dame as North Carolina Tar Heels come to South Bend. This matchup gets the edge over a handful of Big Ten clashes. They'll likely receive a good bit of attention. But Sam Howell and the Tar Heels should once again have one of the nation's top offenses and will look for revenge after being stonewalled last fall at home by the Irish. Plenty of question marks are in the air for Notre Dame, but it's tough to assume this team won't be ranked for the most part or the entirety of 2021. They've won 10-plus games each of the last 4 seasons. A very tough schedule for Notre Dame, and they replace a good bit, as we mentioned earlier. But I don't see why these teams won't be ranked inside the top 15 come Week 9. Week 10, can't wait for this one. Oxford, Mississippi. This is a long shot as LSU travels to Bama, A&M will host Auburn, and even Iowa State welcomes Texas. But considering the intrigue behind this matchup, how cool would it be to see it on game day? Hugh Freeze would be making his return to Oxford following his firing at Ole Miss and brings a tough team with him led by star quarterback Malik Willis. Lane Kiffin's unit will be fielding one of the nation's top offenses as well, led by Matt Corral. And some improvements could potentially make this Ole Miss squad a top 25 team come late fall. But nonetheless, why not take the game day crew back to Vaughn Hemingway Stadium? Everybody loves the atmosphere of Ole Miss, and Liberty's going to be a really good football team this year. If Ole Miss is struggling to maintain a sub 500 record, then we probably won't see it. But if they're sitting at that 7-2 mark or something like that, then we could certainly see Ole Miss welcome Liberty on game day. Regardless, this is going to be a great matchup. Can't wait to see it. Kind of reminiscent of a couple years ago when Memphis traveled to Ole Miss and actually upset them. So feels kind of that way, and I can't wait to watch this game. Week 11, Tallahassee, Florida. The Hurricanes of Miami come to Florida State to take on the Seminoles. This is contingent on these teams, actually being competitive. But with this being Cupcake Week and the rivalry being renewed between these two teams, along with my expectations for these squads, they could be paid a visit by the game day crew. Miami can beat anybody in the country if De'Aaron King at quarterback, and the Noles should look better on both sides of the ball this fall. In return, leading to more wins and set them up for this opportunity. The Noles, they added Mackenzie Milton this offseason. Got some promising young players on defense. I have Florida State personally at 5-7, but since it's Cupcake Week, and if they flip the script and win more games than I expect, then I think we could see this on game day. If not, it'll probably be, an FCS school, or plenty of teams are going to show up and be better than we expected, and maybe you could probably see a Group of 5 contest happening in Week 11. Take the crew to Lynchburg, Virginia, in Week 12. The Raging Cajuns of Louisiana, led by Billy Napier. I have them squaring. They square up with Liberty in Week 12. I have the crew showing up to this game. I think both of these teams are going to be among the best in their respective conference, or independent for Liberty, and then the Sun Belt for Louisiana. Both these teams are going to be really impressive. We just mentioned Liberty a moment ago, and was thinking, man, if we could just have this be in Lynchburg, this would essentially be set in stone if Ole Miss was coming to Virginia. But in Week 12, the Flames do host a power in Louisiana. Billy Napier has done wonders with the Raging Cajuns. He's went 21-4 over the past 2 seasons. That isn't expected to change this fall. They lose their top 2 backs in Trey Smith and Ragas. But Chris Smith is there. Levi Lewis is back, traveling to take on another presumable ranked team in Liberty. Both teams excel at running the football and playing tough defense, so one can only wonder how this might play out. This is going to be a great matchup Week 12, regardless of the game day crew is there or not. Plenty to play for. A potential New Year's 6 bid will be on the line in Week 12 for these two schools. Can't wait to see what happens there. This one is always hard to predict. Week 13, multiple options. Rivalry week, some of these matchups aren't even worth noting, while other underrated rivalries come to light and all of a sudden become ranked matchups. Auburn, for example, hosts Alabama. Michigan hosts Ohio State. Texas A&M heads to Baton Rouge. Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin even square off in the Egg Bowl for the second time. The Irish travel to Stanford in a game that's always competitive, while USC hosts BYU, and the Oklahoma Sooners head back to Stillwater as they look to probably wrap up a Big 12 title berth. they're going to look to continue the domination over the Pokes as well, I should note. Wherever College Game Day goes on November 27th, one thing is for certain, and that will be a whale of a weekend, as it always is. But it's just too many matchups to try and predict just one. Didn't have that problem too many times throughout this podcast, but Week 13 most certainly you cannot try and even predict what's going to happen throughout the year to set this up. Regardless, though, I think that's going to wrap it up for this podcast. A lot of great games week to week. Can't see what happens. I think the group of five is going to get a little bit more spotlight this season, as are some other teams like, Cincinnati, Arizona State, and Utah, as we noted. The Game Day crew heading back to the Swamp. I think there's a lot of interesting matchups this year, and I cannot wait to see this year in college football. So that's going to wrap it up, guys. Make sure you leave a comment, subscribe. Where do you want to see Game Day go to this year? And thank you for tuning in.